So this is kind of relevant considering some of your quizzes had that negative on there. And this is why that quiz used to cover 1, 5, and 1, 6, but now it just covers 1, 5. Imaginary numbers. So when you have a square root, we know that the square root of something like 25 is what? 5. And I'm going to say plus or minus 5 because it can be positive 5 times positive 5 or negative 5 times negative 5. But what if I asked you, what's the square root of negative 25? There's nothing you can do, right? Do we all agree there's nothing you can do? Because if the two numbers have to be exactly the same, the only way to get a negative when you multiply two things is if one is positive and one is negative, right? So this is where imaginary numbers come into play. We let I, and this is a little variable I, be the square root of negative 1. Okay? It's an imaginary number. Just like we have real numbers, we have rational numbers, irrational numbers, we also have imaginary numbers. And imaginary numbers just come into play when there's a negative under the square root. Okay? So I is the square root of negative 1. So if I use that, and I have the square root of negative 25, well, that means what I could really do is say, remember how we can break apart like we were doing, where we did this with a perfect square? We can also break apart with a negative radical, right? Because negative 1 times 25 is negative 25. So this becomes I times the square root of 25. And you told me the square root of 25 is 5. So I would have 5i, and it still gets the plus or minus. So actually, the square root of negative 25 is plus or minus 5i. Okay? The only new thing, now, do you have to go through this every single time you have a negative under a square root? No. If you can just recognize this drops and put an I instead. Okay? The negative goes away, and we put an I on the outside. So if I have, okay. Like, what do you do? Shh. About the work and everything else is exactly the same. In general, when we have imaginary numbers, if this number cannot be broken down any further and I have a radical, the I goes in front of the radical. Okay? But if it's a whole number, it's 6i. Now, and I still do all the same stuff I did with radicals before. What if it's the square root of negative 32? It'd be 16 and 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull this negative out and have I times the square root of 32. But I have to recognize that I can divide 32 by 16 and simplify that radical. Okay? So here, 16 and 2. But now when I write it, if it's a whole number, the I follows it. If it's a radical, it comes in front. So I would write this as 4i square root of 2. Does that make sense to everybody? No? Where did I lose? All right, do you understand?
I didn't see what you did in the beginning, so I was right.
Pull the negative out. That's right. This is where the negative went right here. And then this is just what we did before, day before yesterday, where we split that up into 16 and 2. Okay. All right, so the I always goes in front of the radical and behind the whole number. If it has both, it's in between them, yeah. Now, it always goes behind the whole number and in front of the radical. Okay. Now, if you wrote this as 4 times the square root of 2 and you put the I over here, it's not wrong. I'm not going to mark it wrong. It's just not standard form. It's not pretty math, but it's not wrong. This is more acceptable, but it's still right. Behind the number, in front of the radical. All right, so let's do an example together where we're solving, but we end up with a negative in the process of solving. So it's kind of like what you just took a quiz on, but your answer is going to have an I in it instead of just being a regular real number. Let's say I had 5x squared plus 33, guys, equals 3. Ugh. Tell me what I do first to solve this for x. You'll see. Subtract 33. Remember, I'm going SAD map. All right, so this is gone. So now I have 5x squared. That's right. Am I right to take the square root? Why? I got to divide by 5 first. I got to get that squared all by itself. So when I divide by 5, -6. That's right. See the negative, John? So now I need to get rid of the squared. What do I do? Square root. So this is just another way to simplify the radical, okay? Take the negative out. When I take the negative out, what do I put in I? So I've got I times the square root of +6. I definitely need a plus or minus in front, but my question now is, can I divide 6 by any of the numbers in black on this board? No. So I'm good. It's simplified. You would go ahead like we did that 32, we did 16 and 2, same way. Let's do another. A little bit harder.
Would you count off like that?
No, I won't count off if you like the way that. Let's do one that we do have to simplify. Let's do 2x squared plus 11 equals -37. First step, what do I do? -11 on both sides. So now I have 2x squared. Everybody agree with that? Divide by 2, that's correct. Now take the square root, that's right. I see a negative under the radical. I'm going to go ahead and drop that. Put that I outside. Am I done? Close. No, why? I look at that 24 and I look at these numbers and go, wait. This goes into 24, right? 4 times what? 6. The I is still there. I've got 4 and I've got 6. Right? And I do that because the square root of 4, and this is where y'all were asking the questions. So it's 2I square root 6. Be very careful.
I too?
It's not wrong if you do that. It's just like would you write 2x or would you write x2? Same kind of thing. It's not wrong. It's just not standard
So
form. It's
there's no
weird.
more
Yeah.
plus or minus? Oh, there is.
There is in the front, but be very careful because this is not the same as this. Okay? Watch where you put that plus or minus. This is saying add the square root of 6 to 2i, and this is saying multiply 2i to the square root of 6. So these are two different operations here, so be very, very careful with that. Other questions?